It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast as we talk property news every day. Available, of course, from 6 a.m. 7 days a week, as heard on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon. Gee, I tell you what, the working week is going by pretty quickly. Thursday, June the 13th. Hope you're not too superstitious. And coming up next Tuesday, this is fast approaching, isn't it? The RBA's rate decision. Inflation is back on the rise again, it seems, causing concerns for the Reserve Bank of Australia. The cost of rents, healthcare, banking and education remains elevated, as we were talking about the other day. And Warren Hogan's prediction is that inflation data will likely push the RBA next week to hike the interest rates. It just seems unimaginable that we would be in this situation only a few months ago. Of course, we've been talking about the positivities of looking forward to maybe a few less dollars going towards the mortgage and into your pocket, but this seems to be the reality that we're living in. Right, let's now go to WA. We're catching up with David Snell. He is the principal from One Agency North there in Perth. And good morning to you, David. Welcome to the Real Estate Breakfast.
Good morning, Craig. Looking forward to chatting real estate, as always.
Well, real estate, as I say, at the moment, mortgages, we've got this decision coming from the RBA next Tuesday. I think after the Christmas break, nobody was probably picking potentially another rise.
Yeah, and very much interest rates, affordability, but it's also driven, of course, by supply and demand of migration. That fact is, they're talking about reducing that slightly, but boy, in WA, we've led the nation in population growth by about 3.3% over the last year. And so we've added 94,000 people into the Perth market. Shelter's the number one need for people. So yes, interest rates will have some impact, but at the end of the day, each property that comes on the market here in Perth, the demand for that is huge. So days on market in Perth at the moment is only 8. So the average home is only 8 days on the market, which is unheard of in this market.
Yes, 94,000 people coming in. Sure as eggs, we don't have 94,000 extra homes. Right, let's talk a little bit about you there at One Agency, because I understand that you've been in real estate for around 16 years. You're a lover of different franchises, I note. You had a Harcourts franchise. Now you've got the One Agency North franchise. These franchises, branding is very, very important when it comes to real estate.
Absolutely. Look, I've had several little boutique offices, based in a suburb or on a coastal strip, manage those and own those. But there is something to be said for a national brand or an Australasian brand like Harcourts was, and indeed One Agency is. People can pick up from the East Coast, through to the West Coast when they're moving over. And these days, 40% of our inquiry seems to be from Melbourne, Sydney or Brisbane. So they recognise that brand. So, yeah, it really suits my group here. We have about 12 sales reps and we represent the Perth market for One Agency.
So how is your team going? Because you mentioned that you've got 12 salespeople there. How rampant is the market for your team? We know it's a rampant market, but your team being kept pretty busy?
Well, it's an interesting question, Craig, because, a lot of people say, it must be terrific being a real estate agent right now. But of course, we live and breathe on turnover. As you inferred, active listings in Perth right now is only 3,291, and that includes land. 2 years ago, it was 8,300. So, nearly one third. And a standard market here in Perth is typically 12 to 15,000 homes. So living and breathing real estate, it's getting the listing is the key, because many suburbs only have, literally 2 or 3 homes on the market. So selling the product typically is not that difficult. As I said, 8 days on market on average, but the stock levels are historic lows. So that's the challenge for real estate agents now, is to secure good quality stock, or indeed any stock. Every product that hits the market, we've got 40 or 50 active buyers. I'm not talking about people coming to the home open. I'm talking about people that are just about prepared to put an offer on that as soon as it hits the market.
Yeah, so 8 days on market, that's terrific, isn't it? Just over a week the property is sold, but the problem is you've got so many vendors that are sitting on the property. There's still, I think there's a reasonable amount of procrastination going on, whether we should sell, whether we should retain the property. Do you think there's any mixed messages in the market of Perth at the moment for that very reason that is stopping vendors from listing and moving on?
No, spot on, Craig. We're talking about people that are living in their own home. They are paralysed. You are spot on. So we could triple what's coming on the market if they could find something. That's typically what they say to us. I'm afraid to sell because I'm going to be homeless. And they've all got friends that thought they'd go and rent it. Rentals are the same. We're at historic lows there, 0.4% vacancy rate. So even going and renting a property is very, very difficult. Upper middle class people that are never used to being rejected in their life on a rental property now are, joining a queue of 20 or 30 people in front of them. And so they panic, they're paralysed, to use your term, and there is a paralysis in the market. I think we're finding investors are coming to the marketplace because Perth has been very flat since 2014 until recent times. So I think they are using the opportunity to cash it in. So we're finding our rental portfolio is the one where most of the listings are coming from.
All right, we'll come back in just a moment. We'll find out more about what is happening with David there from One Agency North. We'll do that next.
From buying strategies, a fluctuating market, the importance of data, geographical differences, confidence in the market, rental yields. Stay informed every morning from 6 a.m. Every week we present so much real estate.
I loved how you have to think on your feet. It's a quick process, but you become quite close to the people and they trust you. So it's important that you are a trustworthy person and you work with the agent.
Powerful, up-to-date news every morning from 6 a.m.
So more than 57,000 people have moved to the ACT in the last 5 years, and that's really proving a strong driver for our housing market and for land sales, unit and apartment sales.
The interest rate cycle changed quite quickly and quite ferociously, so to see the values come down as quickly as it has is stark contrast to where we were, not only 12 months, 18 months ago.
From interest rates rising, a shifting landscape, rentals running hot, clearance rates, a tight rental market, we cover it all every morning from 6 a.m. on the Real Estate Breakfast. From first-time home buyers to seasoned investors to breaking property news. Discover the stories behind the real estate.
And it is a Real Estate Thursday, talking property as we do every morning, and this time talking to David Snell there in Perth. Just before the break, we were talking about just how many vendors at the moment are just sitting and waiting because you've got to replace your property, right? That's the big problem. Now, we talk about it being a rampant market. David, how do buyers particularly get in front of the queue? Because a lot of buyers, but not that many properties.
No, well, even off air, we were discussing this interesting fact. So I sold a property a couple of weekends ago that got a lot of publicity here in Perth because so many people turned up, like literally, 500 over 3 home opens, Thursday night, Saturday and Sunday. We talked about selling in 8 days, but it feels like we're doing, 38 days work in 8 days because the intensity of it all, the number of inspections, the number of home opens, the number of offers. That particular home achieved 44 offers. And so there's 44 offers coming forward. How do you get noticed? Many of them were very similar sort of offers. In Western Australia, typically we don't do auctions. Just be aware of that in terms of differentiation on the East Coast. My son is the CEO of Ray White and a big auctioneer, and he always gives me a hard time about that, saying that we should auction all his properties. But that's another topic for another day. But in WA, I received, for example, of those 44, 9 letters of plea to the owner of why they should be picked to be the successful purchaser. I didn't ask for these letters, they volunteered them. And Craig, I'm talking about letters that included wedding photographs. I'm not joking, I've got one in front of me. They talk about their family used to live in the suburb and what it meant to them, and how, earlier times there was a divorce and now they've got the opportunity to come back. Even a couple of people whose family passed away and left money for them so they can get back into this suburb, and they put the pleas to the owners. This particular home hadn't been renovated for a long time as an original condition, and the buyers were describing what they do to the property to bring it back to its former glory. And I've got to be honest, the owner, who was very elderly, was very touched and very moved by those, compared to, say, someone that's just going to knock it down or do something else. And with very similar offers, unsurprisingly, the successful purchaser was one that wrote a personal plea, gave a description. Some buyers even offered the owner that they could come back and see it after they finished renovating it. So it was quite an experience, and it meant a lot to her and had an impact.
Well, we did ask that question, how do buyers get in front of the queue? And clearly they've been thinking about it. And I've got to say, with the hundreds of podcasts that we do every year, I have never heard of that. Our listeners have never heard one of our guests talking about what you've just said. So that just sort of paves the way for people listening to the podcast who are missing out right now. Write a letter to the vendor. I mean, what harm can it do? It's only your time, pen to paper, although in 2024, it's your fingers on the keypad and you might get the right result. Just before I let you go, I just want to ask you a question, and that is, with all of the talk about due diligence, you were talking about it just a moment ago, have you found personally over the last few years that people are doing a far greater amount of due diligence these days? And I can sort of put it down to like podcasts like us, and everywhere there's a lot of talking points of be very careful with A, B and C.
Fascinating question, Craig. Do you want the honest answer from me here in Perth?
Yes.
No, they're doing less and less because they're so desperate. 2 years ago, yes, they were. And like a year ago, as you say, there's extra information, there's RP data, the banks are offering internet appraisals over their phone. But right now, I studied real estate valuation, and I say to the locals now, I don't know what anything's worth anymore. So a property that all the artificial intelligence says was worth 1.1, the property in question we just described actually went for 1.4 with 25, and not just one silly person, with about 20 offers over the supposed market number. Suddenly people were no building report, no termite report, no good working order report, which would have been standard stuff previously. Just give me the property, here's the money, let me walk in. We're finding that people in Perth right now, buyers are prepared to look the other way on a lot of things that previously they may not have. I guess it's a sign of, dare I say it, desperation at the moment that's willing to happen, yeah.
So the desperation of the market is playing a key factor. All right then, David, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for those comments to give us a little bit of an insight. Enjoy your Thursday, and thank you so much for coming on to the Real Estate Breakfast this morning.
It's been a pleasure, Craig. Thank you.
We talk to some of the most influential figures in the real estate industry, from leading commentators to investors to real estate principals. Only on the Real Estate Podcast. We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.